Welcome, everyone, to the Brian Grant Foundation Wellness Webcast of July. I hope you're all having an enjoyable and active summer. Now, do you shy away from the kitchen? Are you finding it more difficult to manage cooking? Do you think there ought to be a better way? Or are you like me, covered in cuts and burns from prepping dinner? Well, today's presentation's for us. We will discuss the challenges Parkinson's raises in the kitchen and learn about some tools and techniques that will help mitigate this. If you have any questions or even tips on cooking with Parkinson's, please put them in the chat box below, and we'll do our best to get to them. Today, we welcome back Christine Ferguson, Assistant Professor of the Dietitian Education Program and Assistant Director of the Department of Nutrition Services at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. Dr. Ferguson enjoys working with people to incorporate sustainable lifestyle changes to improve their overall health and quality of life. Today, we'll focus on solutions to make cooking easier for people with Parkinson's. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Ferguson. I'm looking forward to what you have to show us. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Amy. Hello, everyone. It's so great to be back. I am going to take this brief moment to get to the presentation. So I'm sharing my screen now, and I will change to presenter view. All right, so like Amy beautifully introduced this session and this webinar, we're talking about making cooking easier with Parkinson's. So there are a lot of just kitchen tips that I'll be sharing that might be helpful for anyone. But then I have some really specific Parkinson's consideration that I hope is why you're here today. All right. So just a little about me. I always skip this part, but then I realize people may want to know a little bit. So as I was introduced, I'm an assistant professor at the University of Alabama at Birmingham at UAB. And I recently transitioned into this position from a postdoc, which is like some extra training at the National Center on Health, Physical Activity and Disability, also known as NIPAD. So that's where I'm actually located today, is like the NIPAD headquarters here in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm a registered dietitian, and I'm a board certified specialist in gerontological nutrition, which is a very complicated name for just the care of older adults. So that's what those credentials are at the end of my name. I completed my training at the University of Alabama, the Tuscaloosa location. I'm a wife and a mom of two little ones that are under 4. I'm a lover of all salty sweet treats. It's all about balance. I have a very practical approach to nutrition where I'm not going to tell you to, restrict and hate your life and, all of those complicated things. I feel like nutrition is oftentimes overcomplicated when a lot of the times it's all about nourishing yourself, nourishing your body. That might look different for me than for you, than for your neighbor. But there are some basics and some foundational concepts that we'll talk about, and we're going to talk about navigating that approach efficiently and safely. So this is our overview. I have to make sure we're all on the same page about the components of nutrition. What exactly do we mean by nutrition? What am I looking for? How do I put a meal together? So that's nutrition basics, is how can we fuel our bodies while also being the most healthy versions of ourselves. Then this is the real meat of the presentations. If you can't tell, I love nutrition and food puns, so those will be sprinkled in throughout. But really, it's making cooking easier. I'm going to go over content on slides first. We're going to talk about when we think about cooking, it actually starts way before you enter the kitchen. So we're going to talk about that, starting from figuring out what you want to eat all the way to getting the food to being in the kitchen and actually doing that cooking in the kitchen. And then I'll also, if we have time, I can share some tips about, food storage and getting your produce to last longer in the fridge or in the pantry is another way to save money, especially in today's climate of crazy high food prices. But then last for the presentation component, I'm going to do a little food demo, a food prep demo. I normally call it a cooking demo, but I'm not using any heat today. So we're going to go over some of the adapted kitchen tools that I will be introducing in the earlier part of the presentation. So nutrition and health. So this is for all human beings. So we all need energy to function. And when I talk about function, this means from the cellular level all the way to being able to raise your arm and down. We need energy for that. And that energy comes from our macronutrients. These are comprised of carbohydrates, proteins, and fat. We need all three of these in order for our body to do the processes that it does best. And you can see in some images here to the right, there's some very pretty pictures. In the top left are some carbohydrates like our fruits and our vegetables. Their carbs are found in grains, seeds, nuts. Protein is on the right-hand side. Protein is actually in a lot of food. A lot of people just think about animal meats and animal proteins. But so yes, it is in poultry, fish, and red meat, eggs, dairy, but there's also a little bit of protein in our grains, as well as our broccoli and vegetables. So they're just in smaller amounts, and then we utilize them or we metabolize them a little bit differently. And then the bottom left are fats. Fats are very important for us. I think, especially if you've, been paying attention to nutrition in the media over the past, 20, 30 years, there tends to be these waves of, we need to go low fat, we need to go low carb, but, and then protein, get enough, maybe more, maybe just enough. But fats are really important for keeping us full, for especially thinking about our brain and our brain health. Fats are really important for different neurological processes. And so those fats come in various foods. This can be from seeds, nuts, avocados, all of our oils, and they're also found in meat and in different types. And so when we think about our macronutrients, these are just broad level recommendations. When we think about heart health, and what's good for our heart is also good for our brain. It's good for the whole body system. So saturated fats, that's found in a lot of our solid fats like butter and cheese, our really big marbled steaks that probably taste great, but when you can especially visibly see that fat, that's saturated fat. That's going to be less healthy for our heart. It causes some plaque buildup. It can change. That plaque buildup can, affect what's going to your brain as well. So overall, we need less. But then that's the one I tried to promote more about, okay, let's not focus on what we can't have or what we need to do less of. Let's focus on what we want more of. We want fiber. Fiber is so great, not only for your heart, your cholesterol levels, but also GI. If you're dealing with constipation, fiber is your friend, but also pairing it with water too. So you have to be hydrated if you're going to increase water. Saturated fats, the picture in the bottom left where you see the avocado, nuts, oil, and salmon, those are actually the richest sources of unsaturated fat. So it's just a different structure, a different type of fat, but they're going to be healthier overall for whole body health. And then lean proteins. So lean proteins where there's more protein and a little bit less fat. So a lot of people, this can click for them when they think about if you do like ground turkey or ground beef, it'll be like 90% lean, 10% fat. So that's what we're talking about. So you want that percent meat or percent protein to be higher and that percent fat to be lower when it comes to our proteins. And then of course, getting protein and fiber from things like beans and lentils is a great way to add some plant-based sources of proteins. And then all of these foods have micronutrients. So they don't provide energy directly to us, but they're like cofactors or coenzymes, which that's about as sciencey as I'll get. But they basically help us metabolize all those macronutrients. And so those are vitamins and minerals. So like vitamin D and calcium, important for bone health. We need most all the minerals, vitamins and minerals that we find in food, that we want to get a variety of foods because different foods offer different varieties of vitamin and minerals. I can't specify exactly what you as an individual person needs right now. There's a lot of history that we would have to go through for that. So overall, the goal is identifying and preventing deficiencies, making sure you're getting enough. That's something you discuss with your doctor and your care team, and promoting balance. But I will say the one mineral, which is sodium found in salt, that is one that we typically tend to overconsume. So switching to other sources of flavorings that does not include sodium. So that really is like big picture nutrition 101. And rather than having to worry about counting macros, and some people like spending time doing that, but I think an easier way of thinking about your day to day and meal to meal is food groups. And so that's what I have here in the next image. So this is my plate. If you remember back through the USDA having the food pyramid, way back when, we'll take a little trip back in history where the grains were at the very bottom, and then they went at the very top were the sweets. And so you want more of what's on the bottom, less is what's on the top. So they found that there were some caveats to that, which is why they changed it. So now we have the My Plate. And so when we look at My Plate, I think this is a great visual for what we want to aim each meal to have. And so the image here, it's a circular plate and it's divided into 4 sections. And then there's a little circle to the right with dairy. So basically you want half of your plate to be fruits and vegetables. You don't need a fruit for every meal, but if half of that plate is fruits and or vegetables, mostly vegetables, that is what is recommended. About a fourth of the plate of grains and starches, like those starchy vegetables, that's going to go in the grains portion. And then that protein. We've talked a lot about protein, but we can also, I'm happy to answer any specific questions about protein and Parkinson's as well. But protein is about a fourth of the plate. And then having dairy, it can be it's kind of, they have it here on the side, but dairy can be in a lot of different forms, but that's how they have it visualized here. And so if you're thinking about like a full day, most of us need somewhere close to 2,000 calories a day. That's really just an estimate. The people with Parkinson's I've worked with, they have generally been between like 1,800 to 2,200 calories. So there's a little bit of flexibility here. That's based on height, weight, activity levels. But on average, for a 2,000 calorie daily diet, 2 cups of fruit, 2.5 cups of vegetables, at least. These are minimum. 6 ounces of grains. We want most of it to be from whole grains. 5.5 ounces of protein and 3 cups of dairy. We can go on a whole separate tangent about dairy, but that's not why I'm here today. So I'm going to try to limit myself. But today's theme is to simplify. There are some people who love to cook. That's like their hobby. They love spending hours in the kitchen. And I think that is a wonderful thing to spend time doing. I'll even say my husband, he doesn't need a recipe. He will gather ingredients that he's interested in and he'll taste everything along the way, kind of like the movie Ratatouille. And I joke with him that he zhuzhes it up versus me. I want ingredient list and I'm going to cook it and I'm going to eat it and we move on. So everybody approaches cooking differently. A lot of it depends on what, your history, your backstory. Did you grow up cooking? Do you like to cook? Do you not want to cook anymore? So really I'm going to lean towards simplifying the process, making it easier. But of course, you can make things more in depth if you want to. But today's theme is simplify. Keep it simple. So we are talking about cooking from the very start, which is before you cook, planning. So everybody meal plans differently. The last time that I presented with you all here at the Brian Grant Foundation is when we talked all about meal planning around medications, meal planning around symptoms. So I'm not going to go in depth on that today, but I'm sure you can check out that content later. So some people like to do a flexible meal plan of like, well, I'm going to shop for the week. I'm going to buy three different proteins, an assortment of produce and vegetables, and like two grains, and I'm going to mix and match my meals throughout the week. I think that's awesome. I think if that it's whatever you're comfortable with and what kind of works for your brain, and if you want to approach every day with a little spontaneity, I think that's great. Um, Other people may appreciate a little bit more structure. This structure can be, okay, the night before, I'm going to plan what I'm going to eat the next day. Or you may have that structure, especially, work if you work and you're still doing that. I have a gentleman I was recently working with, and we had to do weekly meal plans because he works full time, and I have a couple of stories from him that I'll share. But so he wanted to do most things Sunday night, and he needed to have a plan for the whole week because he only wanted to go grocery shopping one week. So select the meal plan style that works best for you. Either way, plan a meal. I think planning before you go shopping is it's going to be great for your food purchases and making sure you get quality foods, as well as your budget. If you go to the store without a plan, you're most likely to spend more. Also, if you go to the store hungry, you're probably going to buy more too. So have a plan before you go. Avoid the convenience food cycles. So the reason why I say plan is because, and this has happened to me within this past week, where I thought I had a lunch planned and I didn't. And I didn't have time to cook. I didn't have time to go to the grocery store. So I had to turn to, a vending machine. I think, what did I do? I think I did there was like a vending machine with like a protein shake. And I was like, okay, that will be, luckily I had there was a little bit more variety in that vending machine, or like, oh, there's a McDonald's down the street or something. It's okay to go out to eat. It's very enjoyable to go out to eat, but making that a part of your plan rather than it being, while you're getting really hungry, borderline hangry, getting whatever's fast. And then those type of quick convenience foods, the ones that I just mentioned, they tend to be less nutrient dense. And so that can, over time, have some negative health effects. And then love your leftovers. I have worked with people all across the spectrum with leftovers. They will say, I absolutely will not eat leftovers. Or they'll say yeah, I want to cook a meal that lasts for 3 nights. I don't want to cook every night. And so what I'll say, it will work for both if you're either type of person or if you're somewhere in between. When you're looking at recipes online, I think the internet is a wonderful way to find recipes. I feel like there's one thing about finding recipes versus, getting health and nutrition information online can be very tricky because you really need to understand the credentials of the person who's providing that. But you may also love, you might be in the line at the grocery store and you see a magazine or some food books or cooking books. I've noticed these buzzwords for easier recipes. The 30-minute or less recipes are typically good, like a Rachel Ray style. However, I will say they'll say 30 minutes or less, but then all the ingredients are already prepared, they're already chopped. And so it's not 30 minutes, it's about an hour. But for easier recipes, sheet pan meals, one pot meals. The pot can be a variety of pots, a crock pot, an instant pot, a stovetop pot, even rice cookers. I've heard of someone creating a full meal through the rice cooker. And so, and then skillet meals. So basically where you have to get your ingredients ready, but then you're just staying in one place and you're doing everything with one dish. That also limits cleanup, which sometimes is also not everybody's favorite part. So I will say the sheet pan meals and the one pot meals, they oftentimes tend to be you fix it, you start the heating process, whether it's in the oven or in the pot, and you forget it. Versus a skillet meal typically requires a little bit more hands-on. So even when you're picking recipes, thinking about okay, how involved is this going to be? Those are just some tips. So this is a sheet pan meal example. And so it's the same picture. And this is one, it's a staple. I cook it almost almost every week, but then I'll sub out different proteins and different vegetables. So doing like a pound of chicken breast, boneless, skinless, that's going to be the leanest source of chicken that you can get. You can also do a pork tenderloin. I've also done this with fish and tofu. Yeah, I've done it with tofu as well. And then so the ingredients on the left, the vegetables I chose here, broccoli, bell peppers, green beans, and a sweet potato. That starch is the sweet potato. And so also when I'm picking my recipes, I want to think about how balanced they are. So that's why I had that picture in the top right of the My Plate. So our protein is coming from the chicken breast. The vegetables are coming from that assortment, and then the grains, that can also be starch, and so that's going to be a sweet potato, but you could also serve this over a bed of rice or quinoa. That works out great too. And then if you want your dairy to apply to this meal, sprinkle some cheese on top. So I have the instructions here on the right too, and I have some text boxes in red, and they're just some quick little tips. So rather, just ways to save time is buying seasoning blends rather than having your own. You can have your own garlic. Most seasoning blends will have like garlic powder, onion powder. They might have a pepper. They might have some type of like paprika, but they have seasoning blends. The thing to watch out for seasoning blends is if they have salt added to them or not. I should have changed this because Mrs. Dash, they are a salt-free seasoning blends. They have a whole assortment. They now have condiments too. But now they're called Dash. So Dash seasonings. I love the garlic and herb one, but that's because I love garlic. But they have everything from lemon pepper. I will say I was always surprised. And whenever I was first starting out as a dietitian, I would always recommend lemon pepper because lemon pepper is a great flavor. And I had some lemon pepper at home, and I flipped it around to the back of the box, and there was salt in it. And I'm like, lemon pepper should just be lemon and pepper. No, they have salt in it too. So double check the seasonings you have. You can have salt. There's nothing inadvertently wrong with salt. It's when we overconsume it, and it's those hidden sources of salt that we're not really accounting for. All right, so shifting over to the instructions, lining a sheet pan with parchment paper or aluminum foil. You would probably need to spray something so it's nonstick. That's going to help with your cleanup. And then chopping chicken, bell peppers, all the vegetables, literally putting it all on the pan, the seasonings. You put it in the oven. It cooks for I always check it around 10, 15 minutes, but it always needs more time. I do about the 20-minute mark. Everybody's ovens are different. Toss it around and then put it back in for usually for like another 5 minutes or so. You can do the timing based on what works best for your oven in your kitchen, and use a food thermometer. I'm actually really surprised a lot of people don't use a food thermometer, and that usually, especially for chicken, leads to overcooked chicken where it's really dry, or it could be undercooked chicken, which is an actual safety concern. So use a food thermometer. I think food safety, especially if you have any chronic disease, Parkinson's counts as one, you tend to be a little bit more susceptible to like food poisoning. You tend to have more symptoms. So use a food thermometer. That's an easy way to make sure that the meat that you're eating is safe, and then you don't overcook it. And that way it's more tender. So before you cook, grocery shopping, we've touched on this a little bit. So you've made your plan, you know what you're going to eat either for the next day, whether some people like to go grocery shopping every day or every couple days. So whatever time period you're looking at, you've already planned your meals. You already have an idea of what you want to eat, whether you do a structured plan or a flexible plan, and you make a list. And then I have a couple people that I think of when I laugh and say, and don't forget the list at home. You need the list. If you're comfortable with technology, use your phone for a list. You can share, if you have a significant other, you can send it to them, and that way you're both adding things to the list. I take it a step further because this is how my brain works. And I want to make it simple is when I make a list, I organize it based on the sections of the grocery store. And like, okay, when I turn right, the first thing I'm going to see is like the bakery section and then the produce section. And then some people always say to shop the perimeter, but I'm always going into the center aisles for seasonings and pastas and grains and canned vegetables, things like that. So, but anyways, whatever route you usually take, it can be helpful to organize that. So, I would be remiss to not mention the rising food prices. They have been high for so long. And so I think everybody is trying to find different ways to save a couple bucks on their groceries. So when we're thinking about produce, buying what's in season right now is a great way to save money. If you like to can or freeze, go ahead and buy the produce now and freeze it. Or you can buy it already frozen, but that way you can get the best deals and you can save some money that way. One of the, a very easy way to save time cooking is by buying produce and different things pre-chopped or pre-prepared, but they are going to be more expensive. And so if you might, if that cost is something that you're, grappling with trying to do, then, or trying to, justify that purchase, save money by using coupons or save money by seeing if they have like a BOGO deal, like a buy one, get one deal, or some type of weekly ad, or buy what's in season. Save some money there, but then use that savings to your advantage and then buy something that's going to help you in the kitchen. I've worked with several people who they approach it really strategically too, which is like, they say, well, I don't have a problem chopping broccoli. I can do that pretty easily, but I have a really hard time cutting up squash, especially, or like a watermelon, like safety wise, are concerned about that. So they pick and choose what they buy pre-prepared. And then if you're buying something from like the meat section, there's always going to be a butcher. They can slice things up for you. A lot of grocery stores, they do that free of charge. Where I'm located in Alabama, so Publix is very common, but they'll slice it up for you. So that's something that might be worth going to a specific grocery store that offers that. So I usually get some resistance here. Frozen and canned foods are okay. Oftentimes, they're better than okay. There's actually been studies to look at the nutrient density of different produce at all the levels, fresh, frozen, and canned. And it just depends on how long it's been since that, I'm going to say strawberries, since the strawberries were harvested. If they are harvested, they're in storage, they're on the truck, going to the grocery store, it might be 10 days since they were initially harvested. And so the nutrient quality goes down a little bit. Versus when things are frozen or canned, it's typically preserved in either of those ways right after harvesting. So that way it kind of locks those nutrients in. And so it might be a little bit more nutrient dense actually. So I feel like there's been this caveat or this like not myth, but it's just been like very commonly shared that canned foods are not okay. And there has been very limited, I will say, evidence about canned food and aluminum and Parkinson's disease. There's not strong enough evidence to sway you from purchasing canned foods. Nutrition research is really hard to nail down just because every meal is oftentimes different for everybody. So whenever buying like canned foods, I have it on the third bullet point here. We really want to make sure that the ingredient list just has that food item that you're wanting. So if it's green beans, canned green beans, on the ingredient list, you just want it to say green beans. You don't want it to say salt. You don't want it to have any other seasonings or preservatives. That way you can season it when you get home, but that way you're in control of how much is being added. And then with the frozen vegetables, the steam in a bag is just a lifesaver. You don't even have to put it in another like bowl or anything. You might have to put it on a microwavable safe plate, but you stick it in the microwave and it might be 3 minutes, and then boom, you have usually a lot of vegetables that's ready to eat. I would recommend avoiding the ones that have the added seasonings and sauces so that whenever it's out of the microwave, you can season it as you would like and you're in control of. I'm really suggesting like adding less salt directly to it, doing some of those seasoning blends we talked about, and then doing like canned fruits. Canned fruits are, there's like at least 3 different varieties of canned fruits, whether it's low sugar and 100% juice or no sugar added, or they have light syrup or thick syrup. Okay, so that's like 5 or 6. So if it's packed in water or packed in 100% juice, or if you flip around to the nutrition facts label and there's no added sugar, that would be the healthier end of the canned fruits to buy. And I will say frozen and canned foods are actually, that might be a game changer for you because they're oftentimes pre-chopped, or you just, you open it up, put it in a bowl, add it with some yogurt or add it with some oatmeal, and then you're good to go. So don't be scared of those. And you can look at the nutrition facts label. You're looking for, 0 milligrams, preferably with sodium. It might be like 5 or 10 milligrams. It's when it's like over 100 that's when you need to really start paying attention. And then you want no added sugar, period. And then with grocery shopping, I know grocery shopping, some people really like going. That's kind of like their outing for the day. Other people, it's really fatiguing to them, or it's overwhelming, or, there might be various barriers to going. So explore different pickup and delivery options. I feel like now that we've been going through COVID and that time where everything was shutting down and everybody was safe or was concerned about being safe in crowds, we've become more aware of those pickup and delivery options, but that can save. Pickup options usually are low cost, delivery options usually cost. Okay, time to cook. When we are talking about, especially people with Parkinson's, cook when you feel your best. A lot of the people that I work with, they have their best time or their biggest window with no off time first thing in the morning, or usually somewhere between like 8 and 11. There are other people that I've worked with where it kind of like goes up and down throughout the day, where it's like, okay, I take my, especially if they're on like levodopa, carbidopa, they're like, okay, the first 2 hours after taking my medicine is good, but I take my medication every 3 hours, and so the 30 minutes right before I need to take my next dose tends to be an off time, or I feel I don't feel as great. So that is when you need to think about yourself and how you feel, and cook at a time that where you feel your best. You might go ahead and prep dinner first thing in the morning, or you wait until it's time for you to take your next dose of medication if you're taking something like levodopa, carbidopa, and wait for it to kick in, and then you start cooking. So that way you're feeling good, you're not nervous about any type of injuries that might happen in the kitchen. Speaking of injuries, we are going to prioritize food safety, and I'm thinking of different ways to show you some different things maybe you haven't seen. Cooking larger portions, just go ahead and cook more and then refrigerate it if you want to eat it that day or the next couple days. But if you don't want to eat it, then freeze it. That way you can eat it in about a week. Usually when you freeze things, you can eat it up to 3 months. And then thoughtfully choose the tools that you're using in the kitchen. We're going over this in depth. I call them adapted cooking tools. So I'm going to demonstrate some of these. So I'm really going to focus on the ones that I don't have with me today, or the ones that I'm not using today. So I'm going to show you a rocker knife and a food chopper. But these prong cutting boards, they have a variety of different kinds. They tend to be a little bit more expensive, but you can see here, there are prongs. They're really sharp. They're actually really sharp. And what you do is you put the produce on the prong so it keeps it in place. So that way you're not having to hold it while you're chopping. And so that way, if you're nervous about, if you're impacted by dyskinesias, or even a tremor can be significant, if you're worried about bumping into yourself or cutting yourself, having that prong cutting board means that that's keeping the food in place. And then you can just chop with a knife. They also have some prong cutting boards where the knife is attached to the cutting board. That can be helpful for someone who needs a little bit more assistance going up and down if knives are typically feeling heavy. A food processor. I've always thought about food processors for making guacamole, like what's in the picture, but you can dump it in, you can dump whatever you need in there, you pulse it a few times, and everything's chopped. They tend to be a little bit more complicated to wash or like throw in the dishwasher. Another thing I'm going to be doing today is I'm not going to say that all of these tools are perfect. It depends on you and what you need, and also what you're using it for. Kitchen scissors can be great, especially when cutting up lettuces and herbs and seasonings. With any of these, it might be helpful just to get some cut gloves. We use these in food service, and part of my internship to be a dietitian was working in hospital kitchens. So working with their food service staffs, and everybody uses cut gloves. When my kids are a little bit older and want to help in the kitchen, I'm going to get them some cut gloves. So basically, the material that's made out of, you can literally put the knife down your hand and it's not going to cut you. So this is something that you can stick in the same drawer as you have your oven mitts. So this is an image of an oven pull rack. So I would make one change to this image on the left. You can see a person, rather than having to bend over and get really close to the oven, it almost looks like tongs, but it has a hook at the end. So you can hook it where the rack is, pull it out, so that way you're not leaning into the oven. And so what they do is it looks like they have a casserole dish. They have the oven mitts on in the second part, and then they transfer it to the step stool. And I said this a little backwards because it looks like she's putting it in the oven, but the same can work the other way around. You might just want to have one of those round oven mitts on the step stool afterwards, so you don't damage a step stool or a chair. What I would do differently, especially if your oven's already preheated, is I would wear oven gloves the whole way through. And the people that I've worked with have typically liked the ones where you can stick your fingers in, because especially if like the thumb is affected a little bit more, like that way you can really get a good grip all the way over rather than using the mitts. Also, buy long sleeve oven mitts. That way, as Amy mentioned before, especially if you're reaching in and you have that jerking movement and you have that burn. If you have a long sleeve ones that goes a little bit up, closer to the elbow, that's going to help prevent that injury. But I would wear oven mitts the whole way. Anytime you're getting towards like a hot oven, I would wear them the whole time. All right, with stirring, I have a picture in the top left is an automatic stir. This is at least it's newer to me in the past couple of years. And it's like a 3-pronged little device. It's really lightweight. You put it in like a flat bottom, either a flat bottom pot, pan, or even if you have a bowl that's flat on the bottom, and you press at the very top is a button, and it just stirs for you. This is really helpful for someone, especially if stirring makes you feel tired, then that can help. I'm going to show you the stabilizer. The stovetop holder is very similar to the stabilizer. The stabilizer, it is a very clever name for keeping a bowl in place, preventing spillage. The stovetop holder does the same thing, except it goes on your stove and it keeps your pot in place. This also helps if you don't want to hold a pot while you're stirring. And then built-up handle attachments. I was trying to find a better image, but they have these attachments that you can put, as you may have seen for like pens and silverware. You can also use it on a spatula or like a big cooking spoon. And you don't have to spend a lot of money. You can wrap something up in in like a kitchen towel, and you can use that so you can get a better grip on it if that's something that might be a little more helpful. So I am going to plug, who I did my postdoc with is NIPAD, and I still work with them as a faculty advisor. And NIPAD has a wealth of resources for people with disabilities, people with Parkinson's, that falls into that umbrella. Their nutrition content is not specific towards any specific group, but it's going to be accessible, it's going to be simple, and it's going to have things like adapted kitchen tools. They have a whole resource on this that you can find on their website at nipad.org. All right, I'm going to transition now to the food demo. I'm trying to be very mindful of time. I think we're going to be a-okay. Because I can either do this for a whole hour or 5 minutes. So
While you get that set up, I do have just a few questions. One
yeah.
person, what would you recommend for somebody trying to find a dietitian that has Parkinson's experience? Is there, a certain website or certain, letters after the name we should look for?
I wish there was a whole certification or specialization for Parkinson's, because it is challenging to find. Even if I have to decline an opportunity, like a speaking opportunity or something, they're like, "Well, do you know any other dietitians?" There's really not a lot that's in their training. I have that special interest in Parkinson's because I have a family member with it, which is how I got into it. But I can share the link later through the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. They have a list of practicing dietitians. However, they are not, there's no way to distinguish whether they have Parkinson's experience. I'm not sure which state you live in, but like I'm in the state of Alabama, and we have the Parkinson's Association of Alabama, and they have a whole care coordinator person. So that could be something that a care coordinator can help set up. And then, because I have our care coordinator reach out to me several times to point them in in a direction. And then speaking with your neurologist, they may be familiar with someone who is local. But I will say, even if a dietitian isn't as specialized in Parkinson's, what dietitians are really well trained on is symptom management. So if you say you have a particular symptom, they know, like, they can help manage it. So if you break it down into what specific issues you're having, many a times a dietitian can still be helpful.
Thank you. And then just real quick, I don't know if you know this, but would Medicare pay for a dietitian?
So this has been on my mind so much lately, and no. So having Parkinson's itself is not reimbursable, so a lot of dietitians do private pay, and I'm trying to think, but there's a way. I was speaking with a dietitian about this the other day, actually, where they can give you what's called a super bill. If you do private pay, they give you a super bill. You can submit that to whatever insurance provider you have to get it partially reimbursed. But right now, I think the only reimbursable diagnoses would include kidney disease and diabetes, malnutrition as well. Those would be the three. So that's something I'm still looking into to see what loopholes there are. But yeah.
All right. Thank you. I'll let you get back to your demonstration.
Oh, that's fine. More advocacy work is needed. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to show you a few different tools I have, and we talked about it here. And I'm going to show you what they work well for and what they don't work well for, because not all tools work for everything. So first, right here I have is a rocker knife. You can see it has a really thick handle, which is really helpful for just getting a good grip on it. And right here is I have an English cucumber. And so this is helpful just because I can grab way down here. And then I start with the rocker on the cutting board, and then we can just go back and forth. Just rock back and forth. It requires very little pressure to put through. And it's a lot easier than having to do the full cutting motion. The picture that I had on the slide was actually a wooden one. Some people really like the wooden one. I personally like, and the people that I've worked with too, this tends to be a little softer and easier on the softer on the hand. So this one is good. I'm going to use it in a couple other situations too. So these are the cucumbers. So we have a couple other choppers, and I'm going to show you one that I actually have a really hard time with, especially if you're looking to see what would work best for you. So this one is a chopper, and you can see the blades are in here. It has a little top that comes out, and you can put your food in there. And then what you do is you turn and you turn. And even right now, I'm having a really hard time turning it. If you have something like I was trying to do broccoli earlier, and it's uncooked broccoli, which may have been the problem. So something like this would be best for like leafy greens, so like kale, lettuces, spinach, cutting that off because they're not very dense. Or if it's already cooked, then maybe you can chop it up that way. So like I said, I'm not acting like they are all super easy. So right here, I have a bell pepper, a little red bell pepper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you with the rocker knife how I can just take the top off. See, so I didn't have to start here at the edge. I can just punch. Really, it's just like putting pressure and punching straight down. So here we see all the seeds. We don't want those seeds. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to, it's super sharp. And I will say, especially with knife skills, a sharp knife is actually safer than a dull knife. So make sure your knives are sharp. If it's dull, you're going to have to put more pressure on it. And then when you put more pressure on it, it's more prone to slipping, but also get that cut glove that I was talking about. All right. So I'm just going to kind of shake the seeds off. Next, I have what's called a slap chop. I feel like this is one of the most versatile tools to have. They have some, so I open it up. It has like the little crisscross, and these are very sharp. And then at the top, you can see where when you close it together, it pushes that whatever you're cooking, that food through. It pushes it down into this bottom compartment. So I was playing around with some bell pepper. I had a different bell pepper earlier. So I'm going to show you two different things that I've learned with bell pepper. So if you start with it facing down, so the skin is down, that fleshy side is up. This does require a little bit of oomph. So it's not really, it kind of, last time it got stuck here really at the top, but here it's still stuck in the thing. And it's kind of, honestly, a little frustrating. And this is where it might get a little, it didn't really cut it all the way. And also, if you're having to like pick apart here at the top, you can easily cut yourself. So I would not do it skin down. However, pull this. Also, just like pulling and ripping, it actually works out just great. So I'm doing right now, I'm going to hope it works with the other side or with the other bell pepper there. I'm going to have the skin side up. Boom. It might be kind of hard to see, but it went down just fine. So I'm going to have the skin up, flesh side down. So it helps push that through. Might need a little shake. And then it can come apart. So then, here you go. So this is one of my favorites. Cleaning, I usually get asked a lot about cleaning. So this little part, it's like a little silicone thing. It comes, silicone grate. It comes up in dishwasher safe. Also, now's a good time to say I'm not sponsored by any of these tools, so I'm not trying to sell you anything. I think you can buy these if interested from wherever. Another one that I'm going to show briefly. This is another type of chopper. This is another one that is fantastic for like onion, herbs, garlic, broccoli, not as much. I had some broccoli here. I'm going to show you kind of what happens. I mean, I already have it chopped up a good bit, but you got to push really hard. So you can see here, I'm just like pushing down. A lot of it gets stuck. They get stuck here when you want it to be down here. It does okay. So like I said, this chopper is better for a little bit more softer things, especially because you have to like put so much force down. And then I don't have it hooked up or anything, but a food processor, you press 2 buttons and it'll have something chopped right away. All right, I had 3 other things I was going to show you so briefly so I can get to your questions. This is the stabilizer. This is what it looks like. First, I'm going to show just a bowl. Say I had a bunch of stuff and, you know, it can like rock, especially this is a glass one, so it's heavy. But if you have like the plastic ones that I have at home, they tend to be top heavy and they can rock back and forth. So especially if you, especially I know I've worked with people who like their right side is less affected than their left side. So usually they cook or do most tasks with their right hand. This would be a good thing to keep the bowl in place and then you can stir that way. So that is the stabilizer. These measuring cups I was just going to throw in for fun. These have really large letters, so they're easier to read, especially if vision, I mean, this is for anybody, like if anybody has any vision concerns, these large letter measuring cups and measuring spoons with a high contrast number, they're really cheap. They're like $7. The other thing are these the jar openers. So you can see here, there is a larger oval at one end and a smaller circle almost at the top. And so this side is used more for larger jars and this is used for smaller tops. So I'll show 2 different instances. So here I have some raspberry preserves, and all that needs to be done is grab here on one side, hold the other side, and turn. And it can be used to put it back on. So an example of using the smaller side would be soy sauce, less sodium soy sauce. Always look for the green for the keep them in soy sauce. This way. And I'm just, rather than doing the kind of like the cranking, I just twist from the bottom and twist from the top. So a lot of these tools are really affordable. The only ones that are particularly expensive would be like the automatic stir that I showed, and then the big cutting board that has the prongs, and they might have the knife attached to it. And then food processors can really vary in cost. So I'm going to transfer myself back to the laptop so I can take questions.
So everybody, right now would be a great time to put any questions you have in the chat box. We had somebody ask about maintaining your balance. They're concerned about their balance while they're taking things in and out of the oven. Do you have any recommendations for that?
Yes. So I'm trying to think. So it depends. Okay, it depends on how the balance is affected. So it could, like how they had that like that stool that was there, or like something that almost kind of like those like doctor chairs, that the stools that can go up or down like a computer chair, sitting down while reaching in. So So while you're sitting, you can open the oven, you have your long sleeve oven mitts on, and then transfer. Having those little like a rolling stool can be helpful. Lock the wheels is what I would say. That reminded me that I also meant to mention is, and Amy, we had a full on conversation about this as far as reconsidering your kitchen layout. Amy told me about a Airbnb home that she stayed in that had a counter height level dishwasher. Genius. So that way you're not having to bend over all the time. What I will say is also if you're concerned, if you try different things for balance, wearing sturdy shoes, having like a cushiony mat that could help. That might be something if you work with a physical therapist to ask them as well. That's a little outside of my scope as far as like different strategies for balance, but I will say there's a lot that you can cook in a toaster oven or even an air fryer. So those typically are counter height. They are smaller though, typically, but that might be a little safer than reaching in the oven. But sitting down and while you're doing it would be helpful too. But also, what I was going to say about rethinking your kitchen space was having a setup like at your kitchen table where you can sit might be better than standing, depending, especially if balance is a concern too. Just being aware of, knife concerns, wearing a cut glove, all of that.
What is the name of the square food chopper, or kind of, I guess, what should you
Yes.
put into a search engine?
Yes. This is called a slap chop. So,
Slap
because you
chop.
have to slap it down to chop. It is also a food chopper that can be another option to look in. They range in price. You can get really simple ones that are $15, or you can get one with all the bells and whistles that can go up in price. But it just depends on what type of use and storage you have for that.
Do they come in bigger sizes? I mean, I cook in
They do.
bulk. I have three boys. So
Yes.
I'm like watching them, I'm like, that is a lot of slapping and
Yeah.
chopping. Is there,
Yeah.
if
And
you've got something for
that's,
more bulk cooking?
yeah, they have larger sizes. They have different sizes for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Um, any other questions out there about the adaptive tools for cooking? We had a couple questions come in just about dietitian. Somebody was asking about gluten and if that they heard it was known to maybe stiffen joints. I don't, is there any research that supports that?
I've only seen anecdotal reports about gluten. I was actually just talking about somebody with Parkinson's going gluten-free earlier. So there's no clear research on this. So I cannot make a confident recommendation one way or the other. It's something that it's okay if you test that on yourself as far as, cut gluten out for 2 or 3 days, see if you feel any different. That's a little food switch that wouldn't necessarily hurt. But I will say with gluten, if you buy gluten-free products, a lot of them have a lot of added ingredients to try to preserve that mouthfeel that everybody expects from food products. So it just depends on what you're substituting it with as far as joint health. Inflammation is a key part, a key component for joint health, especially if there's some joint pain going on. So rather than, you're welcome to explore gluten-free, but I would explore more anti-inflammatory foods. So foods high in antioxidants, fish oil, omega-3s, choosing more whole foods and less ultra processed foods, which is like, the box type foods that have lots of ingredients.
And I was just wondering about maybe the materials that we use in the kitchen, like wood versus plastic cutting boards, or our plates and cups, ceramic versus, melamine or something like that. Are they some easier and safer than others?
Yeah, so There's a few different parts to that, so I'll keep my answer brief. But what I've noticed is the some people with Parkinson's, they tend to feel more stable when they are working with heavier
Hmm.
tools. And I'm saying tools in the broadest sense, but
Hmm.
things, bowls and even like spoons. So as far as safety wise goes, but if it's breakable like ceramic, and if you're worried about dropping, and that might be something to not use. And then as far as safety with plastic, that's a whole other topic as far as like the microplastics that are in food, but
Hmm.
that's still very much under investigation as far as its impact on health. But I would go for something that is shatterproof and a little heavier.
All right. Well, we have come up to the hour. I want to thank you so much for your demonstration. Dr. Ferguson, you provided some great tips, information about our diets, our planning, and practical ways to make changes in the kitchen. I hope everyone joining us today is walking away with new information and new confidence for cooking safely. Before I go, I wanted to let you all know about a special presentation we have coming up on July 24th at noon Pacific time. We have a wonderful group of people with Parkinson's who curated digital stories about their experiences with PD. They will be joining us in a panel to debut their videos and share what it was like to make them. I welcome you all to join us for this special event and meet these amazing people. Dr. Ferguson, thank you again for joining us. I encourage everyone to get outside and be active today, followed by a healthy meal you have prepared safely in the kitchen. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.